All right, I do apologize for only providing a copy of my filled out notes. So I'm going to go through and make a quick video to try to explain anything that we're having problems with, okay? So first off, we want to define what an integer is. An integer is a whole number and their opposites. If you think about their opposites, like if we start, whole numbers are always to the right of 0 in the number line, and their opposites will be to the left of 0 in the number line. So integers are positive and negative numbers with no decimals, okay, and 0. That is the definition of an integer, okay? So we can clearly see them on the number line. Now, first, the directions were to write the integer as the situation. Am I going to have a negative number or am I going to have a positive number? So a 3-yard gain, that would be a positive 3. I'm not going to write a plus sign in front of it, because that we don't really write that unless we're adding 3. A $75 deposit, I'm putting that into my bank. That is also a positive integer. Oh, I'm going down, but that's okay. So this next one, number 5, well, actually, you know what? I'll go to number 2. 8 degrees below normal. Well, below means it's negative, so it's negative 8. 44 says a 21-pound loss. That is going to be a negative integer. Now for number 5, it says 5 miles above sea level. That is positive. Number 6 says a $40 deduction. We are going to take that away. That is a negative number, negative integer. Number 7, 2 strokes under par. That is also a negative integer. And then you might not know what a surcharge is, but that's like a fee that you have to pay. So that's also, for number 8, that is going to be a negative integer, negative 15. All right, so now we're going to be comparing and ordering integers. So I'm not going to go through all of these, but I will go through the comparing them, and then I'll do 2 of the ordering ones. So when we're comparing, it's really important that we pay attention to the signs of a number. Obviously, a negative number is going to be much smaller than a positive number. Sometimes in our minds, we're like, well, 12 is bigger, but negative 12 is not bigger. So negative 12 is less than. In number 10, when you're comparing 2 negatives, the bigger the negative, the farther away from 0 it is, the smaller the number. So in this case, negative 7 is bigger than negative 23. Number 11, obviously a positive number is bigger than a negative. So 1 is bigger than negative 6. Number 12, I have 2 negatives. Remember, the bigger the negative, the smaller the number. So negative 18 is smaller than negative 15. All right, number 13, I have a positive and a negative. Well, positive is always bigger than a negative. Number 14, this is really strange because I'm comparing negative 13 and 0. So just know the bigger the negative, the smaller the number. So 0 in this case is bigger than negative 13. Comparing 2 negatives, the biggest negative is the smallest number. So negative 36 is greater than negative 40. And number 16, negative 29 is greater than, oh, I'm sorry, number 15, I have that backwards. Negative 40, silly goose. That's a bigger negative. So negative 36 is smaller than negative 40. And then number 16, negative 29 is not bigger than, oh my goodness, I'm going out of control here. I am so sorry. The bigger the negative, the smaller the number. So it needs to be pointing to the bigger negative. All right. Hopefully you have a handle on that. All right, so for 17 and 18, we are ordering the integers least to greatest. So I start with my smallest number here. I look at all the numbers. And the smallest number I have is negative 9. And then I always cross them off my list so that I know I already counted it. The next smallest number is negative 5. Then I have negative 1. Now I have 4, 0, and 13. The next biggest number is 0. Then 4, then 13. Okay, that wasn't too bad. Oh, look, I missed one. Oh my gosh. Well, 2 is going to go between the 0 and the 4. Ay, ay, ay. See, we all make mistakes. Another thing I do to make sure that I have all the numbers, I count how many numbers I started with. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And then I count how many numbers I ended with. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, good. I got all the numbers. All right, for number 18, the biggest negative or the smallest number is negative 27. Then negative 24. Then negative 11. Then negative 8. Then 16. Oh, I had my comma there. And then 21. And let's count our numbers. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, I counted for all the numbers. All right, remember, absolute value is the measure of distance from 0 on the number line. That is the definition of an absolute value, okay? So the notation is kind of funky. That's when you have these bars, and then you have something in between. And if I was to read this notation, I would say the absolute value of x. This is the absolute value of x. So when we evaluate expressions that just have a number in between those absolute value bars, remember, it's how many units away from 0. So 21, the absolute value of 7 is just 7. For 22, the absolute value of negative 20 is 20 because it's 20 units away from 0. It's always positive. Okay? So if you are just looking at integers and absolute values, no matter what the integer is, it's always going to be positive. All right, so number 23, absolute value of negative 4 is 4. Number 24, the absolute value of 18 is 18. 25, the absolute value of 35 is 35. And number 26, the absolute value of negative 11 is just positive 11. Okay, so it's a measure of distance from 0 on the number line. So now I want to look a little bit at adding integers, right? If we think about it, we move to the right on the number line. They're getting bigger. The numbers on the right get bigger on the number line. So when I use this visual example, negative 3 plus 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 is positive 5. Okay, I think we're pretty good at this. Like, I'm just going to go through the answers here. This is 9. Number 2, negative 11 plus 9 is negative 2. It is closer. It is going to the right. Number 3, negative 2 plus 6 is 4. For number 4, negative 7 plus 7 gets us to 0. Number 5, negative 21 plus 3 is negative 18. We only move 3 units to the right from negative 21. And we always start with that first number. So for number 6, we start at negative 9 and we add 13 and we get positive 4. So that's when we're adding integers. When we're subtracting integers, obviously we're going to go left because all of the small numbers, or the smallest numbers, are to the left on the number line. So if I start at negative 1 here in my example, and I go, and I subtract 3, I go 1, 2, 3 to the left, I get negative 4. All right? So if I start at 9 and I subtract 4, I go to 5. If I start at negative 2 and I subtract 5, I go to negative 7. For number 9, if I start at 4 and I subtract 6, that gets me to negative 2. Number 10, I start at negative 3 and I subtract 3, that gets me to negative 6. Number 11, if I start at negative 28 and I subtract 8, that gets me to negative 36. Number 12, if I start at negative 5 and I subtract 11, that gets me to negative 16. So just make sure you take your time when you're adding and subtracting integers. So watch out for double signs. This is really important because if you see plus a negative, just It's just subtraction, just subtract. If you see minus a negative, this is a weirdo. If you see two negatives like that together and there's no number in between, that is addition. Because really what it's saying is the opposite of subtraction. I hope I spelled that right. Okay, so I'm just going to go through and look at the signs, okay? So right here I have plus a negative. That means I subtract. 2 minus 6 is negative 4. If I see plus a negative, that's just subtract. Negative 7 minus 1 is negative 8. For number 15, I see plus subtraction. Plus minus, that's going to be just subtraction. Negative 20 minus 5 is negative 25. For 18, I see plus and the minus together, so that's just subtraction. 18 minus 2 is 16. For number 17, I have, here I go, my plus minus together. I know that's subtraction. Negative 15 minus 14 is negative 29. I don't know if you know the old song. It was like, same signs keep and add, different signs subtract. Keep the sign of the bigger number, then you'll be exact. Try to channel that when you're adding and subtracting integers. All right, plus minus together, that's just subtraction. So it's 1 minus 7, negative 6. All right, so now down here, we're going to get to the pluses. I'm sorry, minus minuses. So when you see two negatives together, that becomes addition. Now this is 9 plus 2, which is 11. I have two negatives together, that's addition. Negative 12 plus 3 is negative 8. Number 21, I have two negatives together, that's addition. 0 plus 10 is just 10. For number 22, I have two negatives together, that's addition. Negative 6 plus 19 is 13. Right? We started at negative 6 and we moved 19 digits to the right on the number line. It gets us to 13. All right, number 23, I see negative, negative together. That's just addition. Now I have negative 2 plus 23. Negative 2 plus 23 is 21. Negative, negative again, that becomes addition. 21 plus 7 is 28. Okay, so make sure you take your time. If you see double signs like this, even if this negative belongs to the number on the right of it, if it's a plus minus together, like here, that is just subtraction. So it just becomes 2 minus 6. Okay, and then when we see problems like this, 9 minus negative 2, this becomes 9 plus 2. Okay, and then we can go ahead and do the operation. So be sure that you have this written down somewhere. Two negatives, just make it a big flat plus sign if they're touching, like if they're close to touching each other. Sometimes if it's something like 1 minus negative 3, I will just be like, kaboom, I know that's a plus sign, and then do it like that. However you're comfortable taking advantage of that. All right, so now let's look at some absolute value examples. This is really important because what's inside the bars is always positive, okay? If the operation is not inside the bars, you still need to do the operation. So for number 25, I'm going to write it above, or I'm going to write it above it. So that's the absolute value of negative 13 is 13 plus the absolute value of 15 is 15. That gives me 28. For 26, they are both inside the bar, so you can go ahead and combine those together. That says 23 plus 15 is the absolute value of 38. Well, how many units away from 0 is 38? It's 38. All right, 21, again, this operation is inside those absolute value bars, so go ahead and figure out what 21 minus 8 is. Okay, so 21 minus 8 is the absolute value of 13. Well, how many units away from 0 is 13? It's 13. Okay, here is a tricky one. Number 28 is very tricky because I just talked about two negatives together. But the absolute values are total game changer, okay? We always simplify what's inside the bars and then see what we have, okay? So the absolute value of 24 is 24. This negative, this subtraction sign is not inside the absolute value, so that is still going to get written down up here behind the 24. Then the absolute value of negative 17 is positive 17 because it's 17 units away from 0. So now we have 24 minus 17. Well, 24 minus 17, I think is 7. It is 7. Okay, so for number 29, I have the absolute value of negative 3, which is positive 3. The plus sign is not in the bar, so that's going to come up. The absolute value of negative 5 is positive 5. So now I have 3 plus 5, which is 8. In number 30, the absolute value of negative 11 is positive 11. This subtraction sign is not in the bars. I'm going to write it down. The absolute value of negative 6 is positive 6. Now I have 11 minus 6, which is 5. Okay, so number 31 is a little bit of a difference, right? It's kind of like 27, okay? Everything is inside those absolute value bars, so we need to figure out what that is. Negative 7 minus 16. Get out my calculator. Negative 7 minus 16 is negative 23. It's still inside the bars. Now, what's the absolute value of negative 23? It's 23. Right? It's 23 units away from 0 on the number line. So number 30, again, you got to take your time, right? First, if it's just an integer in the absolute value bar with no operations, we can just pull it right out. The absolute value of positive 4 is 4. That minus sign's not inside the bar, so it's going to stay there. The absolute value of negative 4 is positive 4. So now I have 4 minus 4. Well, that's 0. Which would have been different if I was like, oh, but Mrs. Garcia just told me that two negatives make a positive. So if you went ahead and were like, oh, you saw this, and then you added, and you get 4 plus 4 is 8, you would have got the wrong number. Okay, so make sure you take it. It's like peeling a banana. We don't just squeeze the banana and eat it. You take your time. Absolute values can be very challenging, but if you take your time, it's not so bad. All right, we have 2 more examples here. Holy business down here. There's a lot of stuff happening here. Look at, everything is inside the bars, and now that double negative does apply because it's all in there together. So this becomes addition. So now I have the absolute value of negative 14 plus 1. And I'm sad that it's a 1 because right next to the absolute value now it looks like an 11. Maybe I'll change my color of my absolute value. My absolute values will be blue. And my numbers will be in purple. All right. So negative 14 plus 1 is the absolute value of negative 13. Well, how many units away from 0 is negative 13? It's 13 units away. So that equals 13. Okay, number 34. Same things are happening here. I hear those 2 negatives. Everything's inside the bar, so I can go ahead and change that to addition. And I have the absolute value of 5 plus 8, which is equal to the absolute value of 13. How many units away from 0 is 13? It's 13. All right, so hopefully that helped out a little bit. And I'm sure you're going to be doing just fine. And if you have any questions, please send me a message on Schoology, and I will do my very best to answer that question as quickly as I possibly can. All right, see ya.